Back to the Crazy House World Championship 2022. We're gonna watch a game from the third round of the double elimination qualifier, and this is between Fumitoks and IgorBugMate. The game is about to start any minute now. Fumitoks being the high-rated player. And the clear favorite against IgorBugMate. Let's follow this from the view of Fumitoks. All the games in round 2 haven't been finished yet, but they will be pretty soon. And I can hear that the players have started. Apparently they have played 4 times before, and Fumitoks have won them all. A nice little strategic duel here. Fumitoks playing a French setup. And Igor quickly pins both bishops. And this bishop move introduces a tactical little threat, taking on e5 when bishop d7, knight takes d7 wins a pawn for black. And I already kind of like black's position here, because white has spent 2 moves taking on c6 and actually liberated the black bishop. That is kind of a problem in this position a bit. And after this, the bishop comes alive on this diagonal. You could even consider playing d4 here, I think. d4 was interesting. Maybe it was too dangerous. Queen takes. Oh well, but d4 is probably happening. So this is an interesting move, just making use of the extra space. But black quickly sacrifices back some material, so he won a pawn there. And if white doesn't have anything concrete here, I'm pretty sure that black is better. Something concrete would be getting a knight for d6, c7 and start checking. And this is in some perils, but it has found a way out of danger. So white isn't getting his hands on any knights, which could potentially be a danger to black. So maybe you can play an aggressive defense here, take, and just move the knight out of the way. This is the more of the scorched earth way of dealing with matters. White is crashing through on the dark squares, but there is nothing to be found there. So a lot of weaknesses, but nothing to put there. Actually, black might even consider castling short in a little while, if he's given the time to mend his position here. The only problem here for black is that he's so far behind in development, so this forces a queen trade, because the rook is hanging in the corner as well. And after the queen trade, you're threatening mate here on e7. So Suddenly I'm a bit suspicious here about the black position. Maybe there is some way to crack the defense open here. So this is certainly interesting. Investing a piece temporarily, but surely he's gaining it back. The question is if maybe black should head in this direction with the king. It's a quick solution to the king safety problems, but I'm not sure how safe it is. Another way of doing it would be rook g8, queen takes f6, and maybe pawn e7. But here white might consider checking here and even giving up the queen because he has so much material. He would have got the rook and a bishop. Very dangerous now for black. Maybe knight e7 followed by king d7 and bishop e6 is the threat. Now if you check on g7, black can simply take because there's knight h3. No, there is no knight h3 tricks, or is there? Yeah, maybe there is. There's no smothered mate because the queen is protecting f2. That's a violent solution. But what happens if you go out on the board? Is this really mate? We'll find out pretty soon. I guess you take there. Look at all that material that black has in hand. 2 queens and 3 knights. But every piece that they exchange is a potential mating piece. Probably knight at g5, yeah, blocking the g file. It looks like white is a bit short of material here, is he? This looked like a mistake. Yeah. No, black is safe. Well, a lot of threats here going on. Knight h3, for instance. And black is winning. That was a very exciting game. I'm pretty sure that white had that at some point. This is better for black, but very hard to handle the defense. Yeah. I mentioned g takes h6, and that's probably better. Because now after the queen trade, which might missed at the first spot, but it didn't miss it here. This is very dangerous for black, very dangerous. I was thinking maybe something brutal like this and even take on e7, yeah. Because you can pick up the rook at any time you like. This is very close to mating. So, how is this? It's good for white. But where was the knockout blow? Okay, bishop. This is a forced mate. A bishop check from the other. And knight at f8. Yeah, that looks good. Breaking the connection between the rooks. You can always under-promote. And now suddenly it's not so clear anymore. White should have taken on g5. I can understand why he didn't do that. Bishop a4. Look at that. Black doesn't have any pawns to block with. Yeah, so bishop a4 was quite an easy win. Okay, they have started the second game, and let's have a super quick recap. White is playing some kingside fianchetto, and I don't like the way black traded here on f3, because I think this is super safe for white. Strange position here. Black has invested some material. He's getting some of it back. But how is knight g3? Rook g1 in some combination here. I mean, you have to take with the bishop, because otherwise knight g3 followed by take here is mate. So you need to take with the queen and give the queen back. Don't you? Oh, surely this is way too risky. You could even play bishop f5 and pick up another queen. This is just lost, isn't it? That's funny. I said I didn't like the way black handled the early middle game, but then all of a sudden he was just crashing through. White is trying to fight back. This covers some squares and maybe threatens to take on g6 at some point. The e5 move opened for the queen, so you were threatening rook at h4. And now when the bishop takes, you just take with the queen, don't you? But perhaps there's rook at h4 then. Rook takes, and then you can take the queen. It's an interesting move, hoping to play knight f2 maybe. Pick up a queen. After queen takes, well, you can just, I suppose, take on f5 and smile a bit. Also, knight at f2 looks very strong. Knight f2 here. I like this, giving the bishop coverage of g7. But I don't really understand this. Why didn't white start checking here on h7? But, well, maybe there was no more checks. Yeah, maybe there wasn't. I suppose one idea is to take on g2, play another bishop to f1, and now it's just mate. That was a very strange... Yeah, c3 didn't look like the best move here. It weakens d3. Now the pawn structure got really ugly. Strong attack here for black. Bishop at f5 looked like a very decisive move. Okay, let's go back. So white is handling this slightly differently. And if I was white here, I would go this way with a knight. Knight e2, knight g3, out with the bishop. Seems very comfortable. Now he lost a piece for a pawn, and compensation is not that apparent. Even though he has the bishop triplets and a nice pawn chain, so maybe let's say it's unclear. Very dynamic play here for white. Let's see if we have any spectators. Yeah, a few. Welcome everybody. Don't be shy. Ask if you have any questions. I'll try to answer them. And black decides to give back the queen just to get some luft for his pieces. And the material is fairly balanced, but remember that I lost what I was going to say. Black is behind in development here, and that's a potential problem. So white going with the initiative here. If black takes on g7, you have pawn at f6. When you castle long in this kind of position and you've moved the a pawn, always look out for stuff like queen a8 followed by knight a7 mate. At the moment the knight is covering a7, but that could change quickly. Let's say white gets the chance to take on e7, knight takes, then you have queen a8 followed by knight a7 mate. I'd say it's quite unclear. Also, another annoying threat is to take here and take, and let's say you covered a7, there's still queen a8 followed by bishop takes or queen takes b7. Maybe a bit premature, this queen check. What's the idea now? So let's say bishop e4. I was thinking you want to feed your zombie army and also threaten c6. Queen is getting pushed around at the moment, but maybe she can give her life for a few light pieces at some point. Trying to shut out the white queen that was keeping an eye on this diagonal. So white is probably looking to take on f4 and then bishop e6. Also, queen f7 check is interesting. Okay, so maybe b4, harass the knight that is covering b7. Also a4 is interesting. You want to get to that king quickly now. So penetrating on the last rank looks like a very interesting idea here. Black needs to find counterplay quickly. Very quickly here. Already threatening to okay, there is no mate that I can see. These light pieces are covering all the important squares. taking on b8 just looked a bit unnecessary, and I think white is panicking now. Ooh, that was bad. Just giving away pieces for nothing. Surely white was winning there. But Fumitoks is a very stubborn defender, I noticed. Yeah, black can just pick up the pieces, and white is hanging one piece after the other, and now black will launch his counterattack pretty soon. Absolutely hopeless for black. For white, sorry. For white. Okay. Bishop b5 recommended. This looks, yeah, the computer even likes white here. It's a very flexible position. d5. Here black could have just played knight e5. So this is in favor of black actually. Pawn h3 looks very natural. But here white found a very strong move, pawn h6. And simply queen a8 followed by pawn a7 looks strong, yeah. You would love to have a pawn in hand now. But now the black king could start running a little bit. Bishop d5 was sharper and better. You could even just take on b5 because you have such a strong initiative. He found queen takes g8, and this is starting to look so good for white. Rook a5 is suggested. Yeah, keeps an eye on the a file and also threatens to take on b5. But now it all went downhill quickly. Oh, queen takes f4. One last missed chance here for white. So, sorry for that long analysis. Fumitoks is playing white. Going for the dark squares here. And also hoping to trade queens. And we're back live. The question is, should black play defense with pawn at g6 or go forward? Black chooses to go forward here. And rightfully so, it seems. Can white really do anything but pawn g3 and recapture on f3? The material will be quite balanced then, but one interesting idea. Let's say pawn g2, bishop takes, pawn takes, is to play knight e2 and then take on g3 and just sacrifice everything to get to the white king. You could do that now as well. Knight e2, king h2 and take on g3. And why not just take g3, take, knight take, king takes. You could always go queen h4 and pick up the bishop if you like, if you can't find anything stronger. But that was just... I mean, black was hoping white would play g takes here, followed by pawn here and mate on h2, but now white has everything covered. So he can fight some sort of defensive move here. I think the other way was more forceful. Maybe pawn e2 just to get rid of the defender of f2. Pawn e2, rook e1, you might consider taking on f2, even if the knight can take. You can take on g3 and put pawns on h4. Looks like a very pleasant attack for white. So this is definitely better than rook e1 because you put the rook on the g file in case it's open. Black shuts the g file. Maybe it's time to start getting violent, taking on h3 maybe. The player's down to the last few seconds. And a little under promotion there if... Yeah, and mate on h2 here. Rook h2 is mate. Okay, 2-2. Very exciting game again. And this is the kind of match where apparently black is okay. Pawn f3 looks very strong here. Courageous move. And I was thinking take on g3, yeah. Maybe black was in the driver's seat all the time. Yeah, looks like that. Okay, we see another French setup here with the early knight e7. The double pin, we've seen this before. Black is gasping for air, but he's without weaknesses so far. So this weakened the king side a little bit, but on the other hand you get an open f file, so but this is way too slow for black, I think. What happens if you just push the a pawn and don't you just crash through here as white? You can get really violent. Yeah, a4, bishop b5. Looks so easy to play for white. And I should mention that the player who first reaches 5.5 points is through to the next round. Well, why not be consistent and play bishop b5 here? I think it seems fine for white. And now what? How do you crack the black defenses? The black queen is in a bit of trouble here. Maybe c3. I think I really liked c3 there. And it's really not too late for c3. Is it? Now the pawn on d5 is hanging. And c3 is still a nice idea for black, who has 4 guys waiting to get on the board. White has a tremendous initiative here. That pawn is very useful. Let's say you can take on e8. Question is, can black really take back then because of pawn d7? So this could win really quickly for white now. Just take the rook, pawn d7, and it should be over. Actually, I'm thinking maybe queen takes g5, h takes, and pawn e7. Looks so strong. There's no smothered mate because the bishop covers f2. So this is another way of doing it. The bishop covers f2, no smothered mate. Looks like white is threatening pretty much everything. He could just take the rook now, I think. That should decide it. Threatening rook c8 followed by another rook on a8. The only danger here is if white gives up another knight, because then there's knight g3, pawn takes followed by queen g1. He's not starting to blunder now, is he? Don't lose this. So now white has the knight to mate with. That's a nice check, covering f2. But not the best follow-up here. Oh no, he's going to lose this as well. That's a shame. That was a really nice game. An incoming smothered mate. Fumitoks saw that the whole time. He was just waiting for the right chance. 3-2 Fumitoks. And do we have a killer move somewhere here? How about the queen takes g5? Yeah, it looks strong. But so does this. Just take the rook. And here white is quite safe. Just take on c7. Black doesn't have the extra knight to deliver mate with. Once again, just take on c7. And don't put the rook on b7. White wasted so much material here and he's still winning. Still winning. Plus 95. Bishop at b8 is a forced mate, followed by bishop takes c7. Oops. And this is the crucial moment where black got the extra knight. He's now threatening mate. But why take on d4? Just leave it there. You're safe now. Knight c8 is the move. But not anymore, because now the queen is covering the squares around the black king, and now it's very unclear. Okay, I don't want to watch the end there. Poor Igor played an excellent game. Let's see what we have here. White not so satisfied with his opening play, switches gears here a little bit. Plays a big fianchetto with g4 instead. And looks like white tricked black there. Black was hoping to do something with the pawn there on c2, but the very instructive check here on a4 picked up the pawn on c2. And now white is cruising towards victory in this game. Black is 2 pieces down. And that's way too much. Pawn at f6 here is just killing. So you just take on g7 and you start trading pieces. I would have saved the pawn for the 7th rank. Trade the bishop first maybe, or the knight first on g6 and then the bishop, and then put the bishop on f6. But what do I know? You can simply take e6, get a pawn for e7. Also threatening pawn g7. Nothing to do here. So queen c5 is mating one. And Fumitoks finds it. He is in the lead 4-2. But this isn't over yet. Fumitoks should be really happy with his 2-point lead at this point. Looks like prep by Igor, and Fumitoks seems a bit confused. What is he supposed to do here? Sensible, nice knight placement here, because if black takes, you can take with the f pawn, opening the f file. This is looking strong for white. And you can pick up the h pawn, and you see the same problem here again for black. If you castle long here, white has rook at a8 followed by maybe a knight or a pawn on a7. Fumitoks is struggling to find a decent move here. So trying to cover a7 in case of a long castle. So maybe you can play knight c5 here and get rid of this bishop. You maybe could have played rook a8 first. I'm a bit nervous that the black king would run into the run to the corner here. If black gets one move, he's a bit safer. This is very natural, introducing rook at d8 threats, and it's very difficult to protect d8. Very difficult. So black has to face reality and give up some serious material here. But when white takes here, you can take on g2. If you're really desperate as black, you can even play rook h1 and get everything with check, but I don't think you need to be that desperate. Maybe Fumitoks has tricked Igor here, because the black counterattack looks quite dangerous. One little slip and Fumitoks is all over Igor's king here. Is white threatening anything? How about knight at f4, just protecting this pawn on g2? And how on earth is white going to cover the h1 square here? This looks like it's over, I'm afraid. Because f3, you just play bishop e3 and it's made in the next move. Yep. So 5-2 in favor of Fumitoks. This was a very nice position for white. Simply taking on e7 looked good. But this also looked good. Yeah, this is where I mentioned knight c5. Was it any good? It's about the same strength as the other moves. And checking on f8 is better, yeah, because then you can take on h8. Just take the queen, probably. And what happens then? Rook at h8. Nice defense. And how about that? All of a sudden black is better. You need to play some defense here. This covers the h file and also introduces some threats here. White is better, but it's not so easy, maybe. Okay. And what happened here? Quick recap. Fumitoks abandoning his fianchetto play for some more conservative d4, d5 lines. And I think I would have taken with the pawn instead of the knight, because as long as white has this pin, he can decide when to open the position. That being said, it looks like black is quite okay here. You should really be careful about putting your pieces like this on the rim, because chances are this guy won't be able to make it back in time when white crashes through on the king side. I would have preferred probably rook b8, just seizing control of the semi-open b file. It's not so easy to defend b2. I mean, b3, knight c3, and the a2 pawn is hanging. And what about this? Isn't d4 hanging? Can you really afford to give away that pawn? Well, d6 is hanging as well, but black took with check, and surely this is good for black. The c2 pawn is hanging. Nice bishop here on h7, covering important squares. And the trade of queen for 2 rooks clearly favors black at this point. Black is completely safe, whereas white is under attack here. Also c5 is hanging. And black could just start putting rooks on white's back rank. So if white takes here, maybe bishop takes f3 followed by pawn g2. And maybe you can just take twice on g1 and start attacking with the knight on e2. Check on g3 maybe. And black spends a move taking a piece, and then all of a sudden it's over. He's mated on f7. No, no, no. Classic finish to this game. I wonder if Igor's mouse and screen and keyboard survived the finish of this game. He's not moving anyway. Okay, so Fumitoks takes this 6-2. Let's just analyze the end of the game. Sorry. Yeah, just take e2 and take f1. So you need to find some killer blow here, but don't rush it. Just put the rooks on the back rank. That's a nice way to start this. Pawn h3 was excellent. Taking on g2 was fine too. Picking up c5 at this point looks great, bringing the knight into action. And this looks even better. This is a great... This should have been the finish to the game. So, queen at g1, followed by bishop d1. Would have clinched the victory. Knight e2. Well, the thing is, you need to invest some material here just to get the checks started again. If you take on g1 or play king g2, white, black has queen at f1. So here you just check on e3, and doesn't matter if you go to f1 or d1, you play bishop e2 check anyway. And you trade queens and you win. But black didn't take on g3 and mate in 7 moves. Instead, well, he did that, but he didn't play bishop e2. He thought he was completely safe here. So he took on c5. And bam. White wins. And let's show what would have happened in the end. Checkmate. But then again, I guess that's what differs between a 2400 player and a 2200 player. The 2400 player won't do as many blunders as the 2200 player. Anyway, good fight there. Kudos to both players for playing some exciting crazy house. And thank you everybody for watching. I'll see if I can raid someone. Kudos to both players for playing some exciting crazy house. Where do I do this? This is the right button. So let's raid Zaraza. Thank you for watching. See you around. Bye bye.